I have a snack. We have a Sage video. We gaming. Dude, please strive. I can't hear the music anymore.
Did you see that Evo Japan tweeted out a ProjectL video?
For instance, when we're thinking about our rank system, we're thinking about what does it feel like to go through like pools and then to have that celebration of like, I made it out of pools, but now can I make it to the finals? And we understand the emotional journey that the player goes on, and we can try to come up with ideas in the game that give you hopefully the same feeling.
They'll probably do this because if you guys know
I wonder
about...
I wonder if they're gonna do like like random tournaments, like weekly tournaments and shit like that for like each rank. I think that would be fun. So like bronze people have a tournament, etc.
Their other games, they have like Clash and other tournament stuff in the game. They pit you against other teams of your skill level, and you play
Shut up, Sija. I thought of it first.
like brackets on the weekend and stuff in League. They do things like that, right? They'll probably have things like this where you can play tournaments around your skill level, or like open tournaments in ProjectL. I'd be surprised if that's not a thing they would have.
Most titles have not succeeded in making their games actually free to play. So could you tell us about why you want to make it free to play, and also how you're trying to monetize this ProjectL?
One of the things we're trying to do with ProjectL is let more players find the magic of fighting games. And right now there are many barriers. One of the things that can help there is making it free to play, where one of the things that we're very serious about is making sure that they get a genuine experience, and so we will never try to sell power. And that will lead to more engagement, and then when they spend money because they love the game, they'll feel good about it. As far as models, like Riot has other titles in the...
This seems wrong, right? They'll feel good about spending money in the game because they love it. But I actually think it's true. I would hella pay for some sick Soto Happy Chaos skin, you know? I'm down. It feels no different than buying like a nice t-shirt, right? If you actually love the game. If you're just kind of whatever, then it feels like a scam. But like there's a very fine line here. It can be done tastefully, and it can also be done horribly.
First games to introduce cooldown system.
Yeah,
so
they
like
did it in
that,
Granblue
do you
too.
have...
I'm not like a huge fan of cooldowns, to be honest with you. Like, I don't love a cooldown system.
I think the cooldown
Something
system
that people
is
do
so
in
shit.
regards to balancing.
The thing I hate the most about new fighting games is combat mechanics. They're not very fun. They can be done well, but they're not very fun in general. 2, auto combos, and 3, cooldowns, and like simple motion inputs when done badly. I think you can do like no motions well, but I don't think anyone has yet. Maybe battle, but I have not played Power Rangers, to be fair. I think the amount of motions that you have in Dragon Ball is actually like the perfect amount, where it's like just a quarter circle. It's like there are technically half circles, but it's like just a quarter circle is enough. And I think that's like actually, if you're afraid of doing more, I feel like that doesn't have that much gameplay reason or like practical reason. To be fair though, I get like, the reason why motion inputs exist, some of it is the balancing thing, right? Where like, to enter with a Shoryuken, you have to press a DP input, which is harder than a just, crouching heavy punch. However, I do think that in team games, you can get away with not restricting power to motions. And I also think you can get away with this better now because there's so many fucking buttons on the controller. I think a big part of the reasons why fighting games exist as they do is because they were designed around old arcades, right? Old arcades, you had maximum 6 buttons. If you play Street Fighter today, you probably know that they're like the buttons. You need more buttons. Even 8 buttons isn't really enough. Yeah, technically you can play on 6, but like you really kind of want like, if you want to bind everything like separate actions and you don't want to do double inputs, you kind of want like 12, 10 buttons. I mean, that's what I have for cross up too. Like I have like 11, 12 buttons I can use on my stick. And I do legitimately feel like they all have some kind of use. Some of them are training mode mostly, but like there's no real reason not to have a button for taunt. There's no real reason not to have a button for burst, stuff like that. It doesn't, obviously I think it's fine if you let people like macro things like press dust and a button to do burst. But I think that these like combinations you should be able to turn them off like you can in Dragon Ball. And you should be able to like just use a lot of buttons because the average controller these days, the average keyboard, the average pad, stick, whatever, they just have a lot more buttons. Maybe not sticks, but especially controllers and keyboards and hitboxes. So I think it makes sense that if you need another type of move, you just have another button for that type of move. It makes more intuitive sense, I think, for most new players to have like, all right, I have six attack buttons, and then I have a special button, and then I have a burst button, and then I have a dash button, instead of like hiding everything behind like quarter circles and stuff like that. But we'll see. I think it can be done well. I hope that there'll still be some things that are hard execution wise and not just timing wise.
So let me talk about our approach to fighting games. If we're going to do something, we feel like we need to try something new. Like we will experiment to see if we can like find new things that can make fighting games better. Cooldowns in Rising Thunder was one of those experiments, but it didn't work out.
Let's go, bro. Let's go. I'm really happy that that they like officially said no to this, because a lot of people are like, "Oh, they made Rising Thunder. That means the League is gonna have no motion inputs and cooldowns. It's gonna be like the exact same shit."
We weren't really happy with that, taking options away from the player. Like you hit a button and then you can't hit that button again for 5 seconds or something. That was not a good idea. There was
He laughs as if he was the one hating on the idea.
a reason why we thought that was interesting. It was to try to balance simplified inputs.
Okay. So this is what I just mentioned, right? It's a way to limit the power of simplified inputs. So instead, you could change that by changing how the move is designed, like making it have less power, or just let it have more power and make the rest of the system okay with accepting that power level or whatever, right? But yeah, this makes a lot of sense because in that game, if you could just do all your good special moves all the time, some of those moves were fucked.
We've even learned more developing ProjectL.
Yeah.
And when we finally get this game to players, you will teach us so much more about this game immediately, right?
Yeah, that's kind of how it works.
The way that we think about this project and all of our projects is, can we constantly be learning and making things better and try new things, not be afraid to try new things. But if they don't work out, listen to players and change.
I'm really happy that they're like openly saying that like if we try something and it doesn't work out, we can go back, because it does definitely feel like a lot of fighting game companies, they're like, oh fuck, we really shouldn't have given everyone in Dragon Ball full screen normals, but we're too prideful to admit that, so we're just gonna double down. So now everyone's getting full screen normals, and they're better. Like, I hate when fighting game companies like just ignore what the players say and like turn this game that someone liked into like a really bad one, because they just refuse to ever go back. They refuse to ever go back and just like keep doubling down on whatever the fuck their last patch did.
League of Legends, they has been doing updates every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And for
That's so
fighting
much.
games, those
Every 2
updates,
weeks is
a
insane.
lot of updates are not so favored among the players, to my understanding. So, ProjectL, how are you gonna keep the balance? How are you gonna make adjustments? What are your thoughts right now?
We take inspiration from League of Legends, but for everything we do, we will do what's right for a fighting game.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
What we like about League is we think constantly keeping the game updated makes sure that the game doesn't stay in a bad state for too long. Part of the fun of fighting games is seeing an overpowered technique, and then the players try to figure it out. And maybe they can counter it, right? And then can you have a counter for the counter? And if you patch the game too quickly, that's not possible. We won't patch every 2 weeks. It's pretty safe to say that. We're going to find the right time between patches that works really well for a fighting game. And this is an area where once we are live one day, we're really going to listen to players. And if you tell us we're patching too quickly or too slowly, we'll try something else until we get it right.
I think this is good. I like that they're listening. I just hope that they don't listen too much. Like, I think if the Strive developers listened to everything people said when Strive came out, I think Strive would be a fucking terrible game. Like, oh, give us back Gatlings, make air dashes instant, like no delay, and like give me crazy air combos and give me more defensive options. Just keep giving me more defensive options. Like, I think it is really important to know when to ignore the community and have faith in your take out wall break. That was a really common one. I think it's really important to have faith in your theory somewhat. And this makes me a little bit scared to know that they're like, yeah, we'll see. Because to me, it sounds a little bit like they're not sure what the game is going to be like or how it's going to play. And then, or how they're going to do it. I would have like maybe preferred if they said like, all right, so in the beginning, we're going to patch it a lot to make sure that it gets into great state. But as soon as we've made the game functional, now we want the meta to develop. Now we'll do some slower patches. And we'll try to find the right pace. Maybe we'll patch too slowly. You guys will have to let us know. But obviously, either way we do it, there will be a lot of complaints. And we have to find the right thing long term for the game.
There's been examples of frequent patching in fighting games and games that just sit on one thing for a long time. So like old NRS games used to get patched super frequently, right? And so I think like a side effect of that is the way people explored the game was, I might as well play the best, easiest character because the game's going to get patched again in X amount of time. Not really enough time for mastery. It wasn't actually valuable as the competitive player to play something that long-term you could turn into something effective. It was way better to just be like, yo, I'm going to play the best character in this patch right now. That's the easiest. And then just do this. Normally, the patch cycle is longer.
That's the
and
worst
we have
thing
more
about
time
patches.
for mastery than other genres where like if you're playing a card game, playing the best card is really easy. It's not like there's not execution and that much mastery of strategy that goes into it relative to like a fighting game where the amount of time it takes to master one character is much higher than it takes for like so many other things. The difference between patch timing has to kind of change relative to the game. And if it doesn't, what people will do is just pick the best thing in every patch that's easy. Like, why would I spend time learning something complex?
That's why I really hope that they don't
I could just
fall
pick
into
that's,
that they patch
easy,
too often,
effective,
so that easy
cheap,
characters just
and do that every patch.
thing
and
you
never
do
worry
every
about
time.
Truly mastering a character or the game. I could just pick what's good right now and then pick what's good in a week or two when you patch it.
Currently in ProjectL, 5 champions, Jinx, Ari, Echo, Darius, and Eloy are announced. What elements do you place emphasis on? What elements do you think are important when bringing in champions to the games?
I think one of our strengths on ProjectL is how many different kinds of people we have that are passionate about the game. We have old fighting game players, we have new fighting game players, we have people who are new to fighting games, and we have people who maybe come from the league side, the league IP. There are obviously fighting game concerns you want to consider, like what is their archetype? Is this a grappler or a zoner? How can a player express themselves differently within that genre, right? We're also trying to look at the source material, the league IP, and really try to elevate it and say, for a character like Darius, what does Darius represent in League? And what's the best expression of that in a fighting game? They're very different games. League is very helicopter view, top down, and fighting game is much, much closer inside view. And so how do you make sure that that power fantasy, that essence of the champion, is true to a fighting game, but also true to the League IP? We have so many different perspectives on how to accomplish all of those things, and we'll iterate on a champion continuously until we feel really great about it.
So, from what you've guys seen, if you play League, would you say that they've succeeded it so far? Like, do you think it's an accurate, comparison? The characters we've seen is Ari, Echo, Darius, Jinx, and Ileoy. And then we also saw the Catalina like really early on. Like the game looked like a 1v1 game at that point. But I'm assuming she's going to be in. Because she was like the cover art and shit. Katarina. Yeah, I feel like Echo and Darius seem like they have the essence down. Jing seems good too. I don't know about Ari, but I don't know how she plays in the game. Does Ari have a lot of dashes and shit? Yeah, you can't make mages like you can add mages, but like what you can't do is like have them only be ranged. You know, it's important to remember that like it's the fighting game equivalent, not just like the 1-to-1. This is actually something that I think is really funny. A really good example of this, of like essence versus like like straight is, or like just straight copying from genre to genre, is if you've played Melee, you know that Mewtwo is really light. He has a huge hurt box and he dies early if you hit him with a heart attack. In the game, in the Pokédex, he's really heavy. He's way heavier than Pikachu, who's heavier than Mewtwo is in Melee, right? But, when you actually play Mewtwo, he's like he's a legendary Pokemon. He's broken in every way. But the one thing he's slightly worse at is defense. Like his stats are over the top, but like he has slightly worse defense. So I think they made a good essence of that. Like taking, you can't just make him the best character because he's Mewtwo. So you have to like find that one weakness on a supposedly almost perfect Pokemon. Yeah, I think they're also gonna bring in a lot of characters from Arcane, because those have also like been distilled. Because like, what's the hammer guy that's in Arcane? Like I don't actually know anything about League, but like I can imagine that like if he has a bunch of cool moves in the show, then they can just take those moves because they've already been made. They've already taken them from the League like top down view and then like expanded upon them. Made people familiar with, a normal type move. And like anime, which Arcane basically is, anime and fighting games are actually really closely related, I think. I think taking a character from an anime and putting it into a fighting game requires actually really little like interpretation, translation. Because like you have a bunch of special moves, you have the supers, you have like the comeback mechanics. Like there's so many things that just work 1-to-1 from anime to fighting games.
But when Ari was getting her visual update, people were like, bro, can you guys just make her look as good as the fighting game? League discourse was like, if the new model can look anything as sick as like how this ProjectL like look is, like I'd be happy. Everything has to look really easy to tell what's happening, but also really chonky.
Oh, it's
like
Jace, yeah.
The hit's got to feel right. The way Darius hits you has to feel heavy, right? And characters have to look slippery or fast, or the mobility has to look cool. Everything has to look cool, right? And then like
Caitlyn would just be firing the whole
it's
lead
so
fire.
high up there.
Would you say she's the happy chaos? Bang.
That like the models don't have to be as detailed to the eye when you're that close, because you're rarely looking that close, right? You're usually looking top down. It's different.
Wow, I see all of you, and I see more people behind you. I see more people over there, and more people over there. So exciting to see so many people who love fighting games all in one spot. It's why we love coming to EVO every year, and it's what we're trying to achieve. So thank you all for coming, and I hope you've had a great time.
Yeah, one of the things that's very special for me about fighting games is coming to these events and seeing the same people I saw 15 years ago or 10 years ago are still coming, and you see them and it's like a family reunion. So I'm so happy to see all of you. Like they've been a big part
Some
of
interesting
my
stuff
life,
in
and,
here.
I'm hoping to see many of you in Las Vegas this year as well.
And,
All right,
but,
let
how
me
the game works and
boot
mechanics,
up
all
the
that kind of
duelist.
stuff is way more interesting.
All right. Speaking of new fighting games,